Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get to our guest today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this podcast, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Olivia Gravengaard on the podcast with us. See, I paused a little bit there, but I ended up getting it, I think. So, hey, it comes with the territory of having to pronounce all these last names and stuff. If
No.
only everyone could be like Ryan Johnson, where, no one's ever gotten that wrong a day in their life. She's coming to us all the way from Texas, and she recently just got her pro card at the Junior Nationals. And we are just so stoked to have her on. And as you can tell, she's clearly in the medical field, so it's a double bonus here because, with the coronavirus and everything that's going on. She just told me before that she got tested earlier today, and, my nose is starting to drip a little bit just even thinking about that. But before we get into that, Olivia, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And I got to ask, first of all, because I ask this to every single guest, what is the weather like in Texas today?
It's really nice. We've had a couple storms lately, and today it's starting to cool off here, which is nice because as the prep leanness wears off, you start to get a little warmer, and then you realize, oh my gosh, it's been 110 degrees, and I just didn't notice because I was just skin and bones for so long. Now I'm like, oh my god, it's actually hot in Texas. So
Well, that's the one bonus, I think, of living in a hot temperature that we've heard from a lot of bodybuilders. Is like, yeah, if you live up here in Minnesota during the winter and you compete, I feel so sorry for you because you are just skin and bones, and you are not going to survive as well up here. So I guess that is a plus with that. But I mean, that's another winter woes story. Like I say this every single time. That's a podcast that I'm currently working on. It's going to be about 10 and a half hours long because it's the only amount of time that I can fit in all of my winter woe stories onto a podcast. But before we get into that, because that is just depressing me as we speak about it, why don't you give us your backstory on what really inspired and motivated you to get in shape and how that led to where you're at right now, just winning your pro card?
yeah, it's been kind of a crazy journey. I was a swimmer in middle school and just kind of had a overuse injury in my shoulder as I transitioned into high school swimming, and I had to end up getting shoulder surgery. Not a huge deal, but it did put me behind enough that I couldn't keep swimming. And so I was homeschooled all the way through schooling. So I needed a sport that I could pursue on my own. And I started gaining weight after the surgery and knew I had to do something. So, and I always admired a lot of muscles. So I started first off doing way too much cardio and then kind of just watching the weight room from above. That was like a few months of just watching, and then maybe I'll go down there and see what happens. And I just worked through like different bodybuilding.com programs and had awful form, I'm sure. I did that through high school and started to get more proficient, and then continued lifting through college on my own and decided in my junior year of college, I need some kind of external goal. I dealt with anorexia throughout um, my teen years and into college, and I needed both like structure with food and then like a goal to work towards with lifting. So I thought competing would be a good outlet, a little more constructive, and it would turn over some of that food planning responsibility to someone else. Um, so I signed on with the coach and I did my first prep. I had planned to do bikini, but he convinced me, like, with your shape, I think you could do figure. You don't have the size yet, but we could go ahead and start working towards that. So I competed in a small show. I don't even remember what it's called, and it's not even, they actually don't even have the show anymore. But I drove down to Jackson, Mississippi, and I did okay. Like, I was not in shape at all, but I loved it, and this confidence that I felt on stage was something I'd never had before. So, I decided I would spend the next few years bulking. That was 2016, so I didn't I started bulking myself last spring in 2019, and then, um, found a coach and a new coach, and I decided to start like a real prep. So I started that in like January-ish, and so I did my second show August 8th here in Texas. After a few years off, learned a lot in between that time, and then I actually won overall at that show, which was really, really exciting, and it felt like those years of work, like, really paid off, because that was just such a long stretch of time, and then since then, everything's just snowballed in terms of, like, opportunities and, my competing potential, and so I went ahead and did the Junior USAs at the end of August/early slash early September a couple weeks ago, and I actually won overall there too, so I got my pro card, and it's just been a roller coaster. It's even weird to, like, put it into words because it just doesn't seem real.
Yeah, that's amazing. And before we go into your journey, I mean, I gotta ask. I've always been fascinated with people who are homeschooled. Did you go to a prom when you were homeschooled?
Um, no, I did go to homecoming,
Oh, okay.
but I was yeah,
Yeah.
it was not my thing at all.
Well, there's always the joke of like you go to homeschool, you go to prom with your mom or dad or something like that. Like if you're homeschooled, there's always that joke. So I had that because yeah, homeschooling is to me is something that's just so fascinating. I mean, I've known probably only like one or two people that have ever really been homeschooled just because, as you can tell with my social level, that would never work for me. Just being balled up at home all the time and doing all my stuff there, I would literally drive myself insane. So yeah, that's why I'm just so fascinated by that. But it's so great that after taking those couple of years off, that you were able to just go and just win all these shows back to back. Are you trying to not let all this go to your head? Because I mean, it's so great. But if I won back to back shows like overall and stuff like that, I'd be like, okay, like I can ease up a little bit now. That's just my personality. I know bodybuilders have
Yeah,
a completely different personality, but what has that mental adjustment been like for you, knowing that like, hey, I've been really, really successful this last month, especially?
I never feel like I slip into that, like, feeling complacent kind of with it or like, "Oh, I've reached my goal." Like, I know that I earned it. Like, I also know that I was up there with girls who were balancing lots of things, brought incredible physiques, and, like, at any given moment, it's like you're at the mercy of these judges who have subjective opinions. So, like, everything I just feel really grateful that everything worked out well for me, but I don't it's never, like, permission to stop pushing to be better, because if any variable had been out of place, like, I might not have been in this position. Like, there were so many little things that had to fall into place in my personal life as well to even make this prep happen. And like that I happened to pick a show that wasn't one of the ones canceled. It's just like all that's out of my hands. So I don't take like responsibility, I guess, for like how well things turned out for me. Like I just feel like it very grateful for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that makes sense to me too, but I'm like the complete opposite. Like there's a reason why I don't gamble anymore because literally I'm one of those people where until I lose all of my money, I'm not leaving basically because if I'm up, let's say, like $1,700, let's keep playing because I've been doing good so well, it's not going to get any worse. Then next thing you're leaving without any money, but that's happened to me, only once, but there
Only
were
one.
times where I walked out, up like 1,000 or so. I used to be a big spender when it came to
Wow.
that, but I am one of those guys too where it's like even sports gambling too, like this last weekend, betting on teams. Like I do those stupid parlays where you gotta bet like six different scenarios, gotta go great and stuff. So yep, I am not the great example when it comes to stuff like that. So that's why I just love to ask that because, as someone who is probably the completely different personality of that, but are you one of these people that I mean, as the coronavirus pandemic has happened, we've heard a lot of people, especially bodybuilders, have struggled at first, but then they've really, thrived in it because you don't have as much free time, or I mean, you have more free time, but like you don't have the social responsibilities that you had really before of like hanging out with a lot of friends or going out and doing stuff. Do you find that maybe has actually helped out your prep as you've competed in these last few shows?
Absolutely. I mean, and that in combination with the fact that I didn't move to Texas until March. So, in like the beginning of my prep. And so I moved to Texas not knowing anyone here, and everything shut down a week after we moved. So, although that was frustrating not having the gym, and definitely like that was a mental strain, I also couldn't find a job. So, I was able to like spend the first 2 months of prep eating, sleeping, working out in any capacity that I could, and I knew no one here. So there was no social pressure. My husband had no social pressure, so we were able to spend enough time together that it wasn't like a strain on our relationship. and he was working from home, so we had a lot of time together. And I mean, that I thought it was nice because, like you said, it's like prep requires a certain level of self-isolation, being self-centered. Like you really are, because every day is about my schedule, sticking to it, my goals, my progress, me. And COVID created this like perfect environment to foster that without you feeling like you're neglecting other things.
How do you deal with that, like in a non-COVID situation, that sort of neglect? Because I've had hard times too, where even, even though I never competed and when I was in really great shape, like I was in college, there'd be times where it's like, hey, you want to go to a bar? And it's like, yeah, I got to work out first and do that. And they're like, oh, we're leaving right now. And then, oh, I'll just meet you there. And then it ends up not happening. Or there are other scenarios where it's like, hey, we're having dinner. Do you want to come? And it's like, no, I got to work out. How do you deal with that mentally? Because, it's frustrating for me, but especially when it's a part of like your lifestyle. I can't imagine. Is it just a huge mental adjustment that you have to make where you're like, hey, these are sacrifices that sometimes have to be made for the greater goal that I end up having?
Yeah, and I think honestly, like I probably swung too far in the other direction. So all throughout college, like I had like a friend group that I was part of because my roommate was part of it, but like I never went to anything. I was literally in my room studying, which I was used to because I was homeschooled. I was in my room studying or I was at the gym. And like there was like maybe 10 times I ever did anything in college, like where I went out or something, but like it was always like Olivia's not going, she's going to the gym. So actually my problem was the opposite, learning to say, okay, today I can, have a quicker workout, or I can go to the gym earlier than I intended to, or later, or whatever, to make sure those social things happen. So I tend to be more like apt to say no and to put the gym first, just because that's like my background and probably ties into like the eating disorder mentality a little bit. Um, so either way, you have to find that balance. But I also think it's about developing relationships with people who are who care so much about you as a person that when you say that I have to prioritize this, they understand that and they support you in making that decision, knowing that deep down that it's not a reflection on your relationship with them.
Oh yeah, just wait until those friends get married. Then you best believe that you're gonna be the one where it's, Olivia's gonna take care of our entire wedding now, basically. She's gonna be, the but no, I mean, yeah, that's great. And like if I was friends with you in college, what I would have done is I would have rented out that gym for the night and then just thrown a party there while you went into there then, because there's no damn way that I'm like, but yeah, that's again, that just shows the dedication that, these bodybuilders have to the sport, which is something that I love to, throw out there, because so many people don't realize that it's so much more than just the working out and the posing on stage, that it's the whole mindset and it's the whole journey. But I mean, just going into this, this whole coronavirus atmosphere too, what was that experience like for you too, being that you work in the medical field? I mean, you must be dealing with patients all the time. How has this, whole pandemic affected you in more ways than just the bodybuilding?
Yeah, I mean, it's luckily by the time I found a job here, because they weren't places weren't hiring because Texas didn't get hit hard until actually in the last like month. They like overstaffed themselves. They ended up having to like all the hospitals here had to just like put people like send people home. And like no one was getting work. Really a really bad work environment here when I moved here, to the point that I considered having to take a travel job in the Northeast where things were getting really bad in the middle of prep. And I like literally tried every Northeast state trying to move up there because the pay was great. They pay for your housing. It would have been like a really good personal challenge. But like,
Wait. They pay for your housing?
yeah, so like travel nursing give you like a stipend for like housing. So you can either take the housing they give you or take the money. And the money is usually 2,000 a month, which if you find a roommate, you can get like a cheaper place and just take the money. So you're getting, and they like may pay for a rental car. So you like get like this full package deal. And then it was paying like twice as much because it was like you were going in to be like an emergency COVID nurse basically. So I tried to do that and I couldn't. They kept saying, "Oh, like the position you applied for has been canceled," because they were like the hospitals were running out of budgets to pay people.
Just show them a picture of you on prep and be like, that job's available now. Yeah.
Yeah, right. What are you gonna do about it?
I'm gonna walk in there and you're gonna give me that job. Yeah, basically. Yeah.
But I'm so thankful for all the things that didn't work out because that time off of work, even though I was like going stir crazy and played way too much Final Fantasy, like I was able to rest at the beginning of prep and like really maximize recovery as I started getting used to like how much cardio I was going to do and how to meal prep for like a prep environment and all that, and solidifying those habits without work kind of taking away from that. And then if I had gotten moved up northeast, there's like literally no way I would have been able to prep the way I did. Or and I probably wouldn't have done the shows and I wouldn't have built the gym community. So like in a way it was like a blessing. And then once I did find a job, they had a lot more structure in terms of how they dealt with COVID patients. So anyone who was like a person under investigation, like whatever that means, could be related to COVID. They like put them on a specific floor, which was not my floor. And since I'm new, they wouldn't float me to that floor. So thank God, because in prep your immune system's like, compromised already, and working nights, your immune system is shot.
Guilty. Yep.
So yeah, so it worked out, like, all the things that didn't work out ended up being beneficial in the end.
Yeah, you end up if you work nights, you end up going to a lot of gas stations and getting freaking Powerades all night because that's the one thing that's really keeping you up. But just okay to make you feel a little better. This is how pathetic my life has gotten because me and my two uncles that live near us, like they both live like a mile away. We're huge Nebraska football fans because my mom's side of the family is originally from Nebraska, and they are not playing college football this year. So literally this last Saturday when Big 12 football was starting, which was their old conference, I have in one of my video games, a college football video game, there's a mode where you can literally just watch your team play without controlling any of them. So it's like you're watching an actual like football game, but they're little controllers.
No.
They came over for laughs and we watched a whole like 3 hour long game of like them playing just for jokes, just to have something to do. So hopefully that makes everyone out there feel better that we were so football crazy and starved, but I'm wearing my Vikings shirt, but they lost yesterday, so I don't want to talk about that. That's a whole different topic, but hey, we all are coping in ways. So hey, trust me, playing Final Fantasy all the time doesn't sound so bad now, does it? I mean, you at least got to actually like play it. So I'm glad that I was able to make you feel better in that. But one thing that I love to bring up, especially with bodybuilders on here, because so many people don't understand it, is that nutrition is 80 to 90% of this lifestyle. I still have some unfortunate friends to this day who still, have that mindset of, hey, I can have pizza and hamburgers 3-4 times a week as long as I work out 5 times a week and I'll still look great. And I tell them it's like, yeah, because we're 25. Call me in 10 years and then see what that's like. And it's just, it's not going to end well. But what were some of the bigger nutritional changes that you made? Oh, okay, you guys, we got a dog out. We got a dog interruption. This is our dog. Okay, everyone, she literally named her dog Macro. So that's the greatest thing ever. And what's his middle name? What's his middle initial?
Uh, N for nutrient, macronutrient. Yes, he's a good dog.
If it fits your macros, everyone, and it fits him. Is he a good guard dog or is he just a lover dog or?
No, he's like the biggest scaredy cat. Our gym actually allows dogs, so I've been bringing him, and he will just like sit on the floor and just like whine. I'm like, you need to like step it up because you have this giant tank of a body, and you are a.
Is he like good meeting new people? Is he like super friendly and stuff? See,
Oh yeah,
here's the weirdest thing. We have a little Cavachon that's like a 10-pound dog, like your dog would eat it for breakfast. The best guard dog we've ever had. A little 10-pound. Now she's not going to do anything because she's so small. Like she rolls over and submits if you get close to her, but barks at everything. She hates everyone else other than us for some reason. We don't know why, but like I've had friends come over. It takes them about 5 or 6 times coming over before the dog doesn't like just come up to him and just start barking the entire time that we're there. We had people fix a fridge that we had that was leaky and faulty for 2 hours. I had to have her in my room and like up, and she was still scratching at the door the entire time that I was in there because she knew that there was a different guy in the house. I have no idea, but she's literally like this big, so I don't. Yeah, that's why
he's like scared of the little dogs. Look, we'll be in our little like strip of land they call a dog park at this apartment, and if a little dog comes in there, he just, like, sits there and looks at me like, "Oh my god, it's gonna eat me." I'm like, "Dude, you have 0 I
Yep.
his body dysmorphia is ridiculous."
We took her to a dog park once because when we're not on our property, she's a lot like nicer to people. I think it's just kind of like a defensive thing that she has. Where like, but like there was a Great Dane there once, and she was scaring the Great Dane, and the Great Dane could just step on her and kill her. So it
Yeah,
was hilarious. Where like the Great Dane was kind of like moving away. So we're like, oh, that's great. Oh, see, he wants to play now. He's got his little toy.
I know. You make eye contact, he's like, "Oh, it's
Oh,
tire time."
that's so, and I love disproving that because there's always that myth with pit bulls too, especially. I mean, and I've had so many. Like I said, it goes with the territory with having a lot of bodybuilders on. You're gonna have a lot of pit bulls, Rottweilers, Dobermans. We have had a couple like golden retrievers and stuff on, but it just is proving the breed because yeah, I've met some pit bulls and yeah, they can be some of the nicest and most lovable dogs of all time. It's like with any dog, it's always the owner. It's not the thing. Now, not saying that I'm not training my little dog into being like a psychopath because I wasn't. It just came naturally like that. But you know, that's one of the rare things. But oh, that's so cute. And so going back into it, and again, if we get interrupted by everyone, if you don't love that, you shouldn't be watching the podcast in the first place because you know if you aren't a dog lover, I don't trust you as a human being. So you know it goes with that. But what were some of the bigger nutritional changes that you really started to make when you really started to take things seriously in your journey?
Um, well, and the journey being this prep.
Well, we can do when you started, and then how has that even changed as you've gone into this prep? Because I know it's an ever evolving story. I mean, you're not going to be eating the same thing for all your journey.
Right. So, well, okay, so I started out, having that, like, eating disorder background. So I think, like, the biggest thing over time was learning that, like, you can handle a lot more food than you think. You'll actually feel a lot better, and you really won't gain, like, as much fat. You usually do gain more fat initially because you don't have good eating habit in terms of, like, listening to your hunger drive or anything. So, like, I kinda went through some binging when I tried to start, like, recovering, and it would be binging on, like, sunflower seeds. It was, like, awful. But it would be, like, dumb stuff like that, and, like, so just relearning hunger cues and yeah, exactly. So many sunflower seeds. And, like, you have to relearn hunger cues, so a lot of that was just trial and error over years, and that was one reason that I signed on with a coach because I was like, "This binging's out of control. I need, like, a plan, but I also want a goal." So that's why I competed, like, back in college. And then so that helped me with the binging. I was still on macros at that point, and I liked that because it gave me some freedom and I got to, like, start building confidence with food, but I still ate very emotionally. So I wasn't one to, like, go out and eat pizza or anything because I still had such strict eating habits and, like, rules for myself, but I would, like, choose foods very emotionally. So, like, I would, "Oh, well, Walden Farms syrup, like, that's 0 everything, so I'm gonna pour that on all 5 meals today," and then I, like, wrecked my digestion. So it was, like, learning to not abuse, like, the power that you have with macros. And then I started this prep with one coach, I didn't click with super well, and I was on macros, and then I switched coaches and got put on a meal plan, and honestly, like, it's done so much for my relationship with food because with macros, it's like especially because I wasn't working and I didn't have, like, a clear schedule, I would, like, food hoard a lot, where I would, like, eat 2 or 3 meals a day max, which is not a lot for, like, bodybuilding.
Please don't tell me you were one. Please don't tell me you were one of those people that would like watch the Food Network incessantly too, because we've had some of those where they torture themselves like that.
Yeah, and I realized my husband did that, and I stopped watching it, and I started realizing, like, the dichotomy between our relationship with food when I wasn't exposing myself to that all the time because, I mean, literally, like, you smell like a candle that smells like a cookie, and you start, like, salivating, like, those connections in your brain are so deep rooted. If you're, like, exposing yourself to this food all the time, you're just going, "You're deprived, you're deprived, you're deprived," all the time, like, you can't have that, and I mean, you it's just not, like, a good place to be, and the more you try to focus on food or allow yourself to focus on food, like, the more toxic your relationship with food is gonna be, which is why I think the meal plan was so beneficial because it took the power out of my hands. I had to eat, like, on a schedule, and it started to like, I started to recognize, wow, I actually feel better when I spread food out. Oh, this one thing in my diet changed and my stomach hurt. Okay, that doesn't work for me. What can we do differently? Like, you start to be so much more objective with food. And that's been like the biggest thing throughout prep.
Yeah. I, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Halloween Wars is starting on the Food Network, and that is my go-to show, especially around this time of year where they make like those cakes and those cupcakes, like Halloween shape. If I see that on, I stop whatever I'm doing and I'm watching that. But yeah, and it's especially with, and so you mentioned syrup, so I got to mention my go-to college meal when I was poor in college was that you make some eggs, especially when I was working out a lot. Make some eggs. You put them in between two loaves of bread, or not a loaf of bread, but two slabs of bread, kind of like a PB&J. But then you put syrup inside the eggs in the thing, and you eat
Wow.
it. I forgot what we called it, but yeah, that was my go to like morning food, and that was yeah that brings back good memories. But hey, I'm actually gonna have one of those one of these days, and it never. And then but then I'm also one of those freaks that would have those ramen noodles without putting anything on them. I would just cook them and then eat them raw. I'd eat them just plain. So hey, I'm a weird duck like that. So anyone, don't take your food advice from me because I'm not guaranteeing any anything at all. But I love to talk genetics on this podcast because especially in this day and age where everyone's on Instagram and everyone's looking at each other, and it's just human nature to compare yourself to others. And I know bodybuilders, you guys know that to the extreme because you go on stage and literally compare yourself to others. That's part of the sport. But everyone's always saying, "Oh my God, I want her arms, I want his abs, I want their back." People don't realize that you can only be the best version of yourself. I mean, there are so many times that I've had unfortunate people that were just like, "Why can't I look like him? Why can't I look like her?" And it's like, well, you don't know what they do to maintain that look. You don't know the amount of work that they put into, and unfortunately, genetics does play a huge thing. I mean, we've had some genetic freaks on here where they can get away with eating a crap ton of food and even unhealthy food, and they still maintain a great look. I've one of my dad's best friends from college. He's like 60 years old now, and he still to this day, he could eat 10 Snickers bars a day and not put on an ounce of fat. And it just pisses me off every time I see him because he rubs it in our face because he knows that I'm upset by that. So he's just yeah, it's just absolutely ridiculous. But I always say on top of that, whenever someone first gets started working out, they always have that one body part that really, really takes off that they don't have to train as much. And they always have that one body part that just drags behind that they have to train to oblivion to catch up to everything else. What were those body parts for you when you were getting started?
My legs grow pretty quickly, and that's been nice because, like, sometimes as cardio picks up during prep, can start to lose your legs, but like, I don't know, my quads just tend to grow pretty naturally, and I connect with them really well, which is nice because building legs, if you don't have them, is like an ongoing struggle, an ongoing struggle. For me, the shoulders would not, and that was more of a, like, I just didn't have a mind muscle connection with them at all, and I'm just now starting. I feel like I'm starting to develop that, so that was very, very frustrating for me, especially having had a shoulder injury in the past. I thought, "Oh, well, maybe this is just something that, like, I don't have the genetic potential for." So it's kind of like both accepting, "Hey, genetically, this is gonna be a struggle for me," but also saying, "But maybe I can take some responsibility and know, oh, I'm not training it correctly. Let's go back to basics. I'm moving weight, but I'm not seeing the benefits. Let's drop the weights down." So it's like a fine balance of in between both of those things.
You mentioned legs, and like I'm 6'3", so my lower body is just shot to shit, where I could literally just I could train legs every single day the rest of my life and they wouldn't gain an ounce. I could inject pure muscle into my legs 10 times a day. Like it could just be a never ending flow just to try to expand the legs, and it wouldn't work. Like I have calves are my number one pet peeve. I'm kind of like Johnny Drama, if you've ever seen the show Entourage, where like I see someone with nice calves, I just get really angry and I'm just like, God, that's not even fair, because that's the one body part where people don't train it, because it's almost impossible to train, and some people do. But I was blessed with a nice back, so I guess I will have to take that with a grain of salt. But again, I love asking that because the answers vary so much, and you're never gonna get the same answer for anybody. But yeah, and I was fascinated that you didn't say back because you're a swimmer. So usually we'd have that swimmer back that we hear a lot all the time. Like I once dated a girl that was an ex-swimmer, trying to give her a hug. You basically was like reaching around a tree, basically. You just had to, wrap around. But yeah, that's again, that's just so fascinating. But when you're walking on that stage, one thing that a lot of people forget is that, you know, the number one thing, I would have never guessed it in a million years, is that posing is the hardest thing for so many of these athletes. I mean, it's harder than your nutrition. It's harder than your working out. I like to compare it now to being a perfect driver, where you can be a great driver, you can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser, you can never be a perfect poser. It's always ever evolving. When you're walking on that stage, so many people don't realize that posing is the number one thing that you're probably thinking about, and it's, it's just so important. But what was your relationship like with posing when you got started, and has posing for you gotten easier as you got on, or has it gotten harder?
Well, posing was definitely something that I stressed about, and I remember my first posing session, um, during this prep. I hadn't practiced on my own. My husband was saying, he was like, my stage manager is what he called himself. He goes, "You haven't been posing. People should be posing every day. Why aren't you posing?" And I was like, "Because I don't have like a routine. I don't know what I'm practicing if I don't have a routine." Thank you. Exactly.
He's giving you a hallelujah, basically.
Thank you.
Believe me, he's seen the struggle of probably seeing you pose in the mirror plenty of times, so he knows what you're talking about.
He just sits there with his ears down when I put my heels on and just watches me. I'm like, I feel judged. I'm like, this is exactly how I will feel on stage. So he was like, just go pose with someone. So I found a posing coach here, Kristen Dwell, and I told her straight up, I was like, look. And I think I was 8 or 10 weeks out at that point for my first show. And I was like, posing is the most stressful part for me. I can do everything else, but like the idea of posing makes me want to vomit. I have no idea what I'm doing. I feel super uncomfortable, and I don't have a background in any kind of sport that would give me a foundation for this. Like swimming is the least like similar to posing because you're not even upright. Like it's like at least other sports you have to have like body mechanics where gravity is involved. And I'm like, I don't. Like I can maybe walk across the room in the heels. That's about it. So I just gave her that and I was like, all right, now, pose me because I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And she helped me a lot. And once I had a routine, things went a lot better because I could just practice it over and over. And I like got some great feedback from different coaches. From my coach, I had people just like give me comments on my Instagram or whatever, and like just kind of watching a lot of people posing, like that visualization of posing is super important. But another thing that I realize is one, people overcomplicate it. Like if you watch people get on stage and their arms are like flapping, it's so distracting. Your arms, like Kristen told me, your arms are like moving your cape. So they like lead your body and then you like reveal by like moving your cape out of the way. It's like as subtle as that. So it's all right, buddy, camera hog. It's like learning that you can use subtle movements to have like a dramatic effect and to slow down. Like people are like, "Your posing is so good." I'm like, "My posing is not that good. I'm not very good at bringing my back out at all, and my arms are out way too wide." I just had a judge give me feedback last night, and I was like, "Yes, I agree." But what looked good was I looked calm and confident because I was moving slowly. You see people get up there and like whip it around, and they don't even like stick the pose. So it's just like slowing down, recording yourself, watching yourself, and taking feedback objectively, realizing that like you're never going to be the world's best poser, so you might as well take as much advice as you can get.
Mm. Yeah. And which is why I found so fascinating, because like with most sports, you can have somewhat like a perfect performance, like there's literally a perfect game in baseball, but in bodybuilding, like you said, you won all these shows and you're still getting feedback like, "Oh, you could do this better." This is one thing that's really struggling, where it's like, yeah, I just, again, that's just what the weird thing about posing that I don't think people realize is that, yeah, you can never be a perfect poser. I mean, no matter how good you are, I mean, even the person that wins the Olympia, what if they have it this year? I mean, they're gonna still have flaws that someone's gonna say, "Oh, you could have done this better," even though you just were declared the best bodybuilder on the planet. Basically, you still could have done this a little bit better and stuff. So it's always, I mean, that's just mentally. It's got, what is that too, like, because I mean, we talk about the physical transformation, but the mental transformation is even, more important. But with posing in general, that mental thing where it's just in your mind, it's just like, "Oh, I can never be I can never really be satisfied, really, is what a lot of people that do with bodybuilding suffer with. And that especially goes with posing. How do you like to try to manage that? Because, like, even though you're winning all these, these trophies, like, you still get feedback like that. And I'm one of those type personalities where I'd be like, I just won. Like, what are you giving me that feedback for? But that's just that, again, that's just me. That's one of the reasons why I could never probably compete. But what is that like for you, just dealing with that, I'm never satisfied sort of mindset?
Man, I think it's like that is your people who think that they've reached the top. Those are the people who start failing. And I have a friend who just competed, and he competed against someone quite a bit bigger than him, and they both have a lot of potential in the industry. And one the other guy won, and it wasn't surprising, but I anticipate my friend going farther because he right after he got off the stage, I messaged him and congratulated him because he came second, so he got his pro card, and I said, "You did amazing." He goes, "There's a lot I need to work on." That's the first thing he said, and I'm like, "You just came second at nationals. Like, what do you mean there's like, you need to celebrate too." And he's like, "Yeah, but I know I can be better next time." Whereas the other guy before the show, he was already saying he was gonna win it, which he did win it, but, like, the longevity of him in the sport, I anticipate being shorter because, 1, people can tell, and people don't like that cockiness. But 2, if you think you're the best, you have set a bar for yourself that you've already reached. So where are you gonna go? And what's gonna drive you to keep going? Because you already think you're the best. And, like, I did trophies for the Branch Warren Classic this weekend, that was Saturday, and I was looking for the bathroom, and I couldn't find it, and I was really stressed. I was like, "I gotta be back on stage looking for or trying to, hand out these trophies," and Branch was like, "Do you need to find the bathroom?" And I was like, "I do. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna be late." He's like, "Come on, girl." So I'm like walking with freaking Branch Warren to the bathroom, and he was like asking me about my plans for what's next. It's all very surreal. And I told him, and I was like, "I need to grow. There's a lot I want to work on." And he goes like, "There was never a day that I got up and said, 'Damn, I look good today.'" And I was like, "Exactly." But we both, like, recognized in each other that, like, continuous need for improvement, and I was like, "Exactly, you can't become complacent." He's like, "Never." Like, you are never good enough. But it wasn't like a depressing, "You are never good enough." It was like an inspiring because you know that there's somewhere to go and that you can only be better and better, and, like, that to think that your po potential for growth is limitless, that's actually really cool.
Yeah. No, that's amazing too. And the only thing I can compare that to is like, that's one of the reasons why I think I fit so well into being a baseball pitcher. Because if you're a baseball pitcher, if you walk out there saying like, if you walk out to that mound on that game day and say, oh, there's stuff that I need to improve on and stuff like that, you're going to eat on that mound. So you need to be cocky. You need to say, I'm the best. I'm better than anyone that comes up on that plate against me, and I'm going to strike them out. So yeah, and I have had a few games where I played against teams that I knew were better than me, and that mental mindset of like, oh no, I'm going to suck today, and then you go out and you suck. But no, that's why I think it's just in yeah, I totally agree with that too. Where there's always constant, and like I knew that I needed to improve on a lot of things pitching too. Like I was never the perfect player and stuff. Like I knew that there was always constant improvement, but just that mindset too. So that's why I love that you brought that up. That like yeah, you can really never be satisfied, especially in bodybuilding. Because I can even bet guys like Ronnie Coleman or any of those guys were probably just still thinking like I probably, I can do better and stuff. Even though with Ronnie Coleman, I was like, dude, how can you get any bigger? Like even when you were at that one. So yeah, that's a whole nother topic in and of itself. But when you walk up on that stage after those months upon months of hard work, what is that feeling like for you? And you finally get to walk up on that stage, and it's like all this stuff that I put into for the last couple of months, it's finally time to shine.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's different per person. It's interesting. I love just analyzing people backstage. I would say at nationals especially, like, there was so much positive encouragement backstage. Like, a girl caught me right before I walked out, a friend of mine, and she was like, she fixed my tag on my suit, and she's like, "You got this." And I'm like, even though that we're competing against each other, it's like literally everyone, mostly everyone, there were a few drama queens, but
We've heard that. Yep.
yeah, the people who have actually put in the work and are probably balancing the most things in life, they recognize that in each other, and, like, the deep-rooted respect is there because you know that you have earned your spot on that stage, and, like, whatever you get, the placing is just a bonus, like, you have won in your mind, and so, for me, it was like, I made it to nationals. I never thought I'd make it to nationals. I never even thought I could get lean enough to compete, and then I competed in my first show and won overall, and then nationals is just a bonus, and granted, like, you wanna go in and win, and you feel confident in the work that you've put in, but you also, like, have a sense of having won because you overcame so many mental obstacles and physical obstacles that, like, your placing doesn't determine your satisfaction with yourself. So, if you are in that place mentally, when you walk out on that stage, it's like you said, it's like your time to just shine. Like, the hard work is done. This is like 10 minutes max of getting to finally show that off. And so you should have some kind of sense of peace.
Well, like I said, that's why when I first heard about bodybuilding, like when I was in high school, I was like, those people are absolutely, crazy because to go on stage for only, like you said, 10 minutes, maybe max, after doing all of your training, where every other sport, you have hours almost every day for some sports that, you get to like go out and show off and, show what you're made of. But that just shows again, that dedication, that drive that these people have is just, it's just insane. And that's, the best way I can put it. I could put it in it's the nice way of insane too. I mean, there's insane where you look at them and you're like, okay, yeah, they're a threat to society. But then there's the other insane where you're like, wow, that's just incredible. And I'll put it in the, that's just incredible part. Now, yeah, it's just, yeah, it's just, I mean, that's really what it is. But one of the things that I love to talk about when it comes to bodybuilding too is that people do not realize, because especially, the myths and stereotypes that we like to bust, and this goes along with it too, is that, it's gotten better the last 5 years due to Instagram. But there are still so many women that have that fear that if they walk into the gym and they pick up one weight, they're going to put on, like 50 pounds of muscle overnight. First of all, spend my entire life savings to train with you because you have found the secret that, every guy and most of the women that I've had on are looking for. And I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. But did you ever have that fear when you were getting started? Because I know you said that you started out doing a lot of cardio because I mean, a lot of women, let's just be honest, they walk into that weight room and they're gravitating immediately towards the treadmills and immediately towards the Stairmasters. And I don't blame them because, if I was taught that way, that's what I would do too. But even if you didn't ever have that fear, how do you like to respond to that? Because I bet you still hear that, all the time from women. Oh, I want to get in shape, but and they either do the like the sort of coy like, but I don't want to look like you. I don't want to get too big and stuff.
Right.
And it's but how do you deal with that? Because that would drive me insane.
Well, I never had that fear because I always loved muscularity. It was my problem was, like, I loved it, and I knew that, like, my family wouldn't be very supportive of that, so that's why I kind of, like, eased into the weight room, partially just fear of the weight room, but also just, like, I know what I want, but, like, is it okay to pursue that? And then I realized how freaking hard it was to actually put on muscle. Um, but I work with a lot of clients and they'll, like you said, like coyly, like tiptoe around that, like, well, I do want to start lifting to feel strong so my bones are healthy or whatever. Or just like because I want to tone, that word, the T word, tone. It's like, trust me, it's not gonna happen by accident. And most people,
And if it does, give me your phone number. Like it's like
right,
I don't. Yeah, like
right,
if it does, you can tell them you will train me. Then basically.
yeah. And there's some people like that, but, like, it's so few and far between, and I think that people neglect, like, the mental, benefits of lifting. So, like, what I found is once you can convince someone, like, "Okay, let's just take it week by week, and we'll make sure you don't become a mass monster." Um, like, what they start realizing is, "Oh, I actually feel strong, and it's nice to focus on something other than food and getting smaller," and, like, just the mental shift that weightlifting brings, mostly for women because, like, we neglect how important that is, the strength is for our mental health. Um, it shifts away from that fear of, like, putting on muscle to, like, more about me getting stronger and pursuing my goals and defining myself physically. And so that's kind of how I like to deal with it as like, one, you're not going to gain a ton of mass. So don't worry about that. But two, let's actually focus on the strength portion and let the muscle take care of itself. And then they start to actually enjoy the way they look and realize it's not just going to be like some overnight crazy transformation.
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And you answered the next question that I have usually right after that perfectly, is that, we talk about the confidence boost that working out gives you, and that's amazing. But another myth that I love to bust, and I mean, a lot of people just unfortunately believe this, and I think it's, because of a few shows, but a lot of people still have that belief that, this is a look that you're able to maintain 24/7, that stage look that you have, and that is, the most further thing from the truth I could ever say in my entire life. And I think it's, shows like Big Brother where people go on and they lose, like 200-300 pounds, and they're able to keep the weight off. Some of them are. I mean, I got to mention it's a very few amount that are actually able to do it. But people look at maybe like that show, or they look at, a lot of times bodybuilders, I'm not gonna lie, they save some of their contest photos and they post them year round when they're not there. Let's be honest, a lot of bodybuilders are not honest with what they look like off season, so it kind of perpetuates that myth itself. I'm not blaming bodybuilders, but I'm just saying that's just how it is. But I mean, so many people seem to have that belief that, oh, they must look like that 24/7, but that's not the case. I mean, they don't know how you've manipulated your diet, manipulated your carbs, manipulated your water, all the stuff that goes into those last, few weeks of prep that really give you that look that's like, it's not healthy. I mean, I'm going to be completely honest. You're at your least healthy when you walk on that stage. I mean, I always said if you were to have a strength contest on that stage, like a push-up or a pull-up contest, you'd be shocked at some of the results. You'd be
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh wow, that's it. Like I could probably do more than more than that. It's just because
Right.
they're so dieted and they're so lean down. But what was that like for you when you first discovered that, like, hey, all this hard work that I put into it, I'm not going to be able to maintain this look? And has it gotten easier for you to accept that fact as your career has gone on?
Well, I mean, my first competition, I didn't get super lean and I was still kind of dealing with the eating disorder. So I never bulked up. So, like, the change in strength wasn't that much because I wasn't able to lift that much, anyways. And, like, I didn't get that lean. So I wasn't dealing with a lot of those, like, health issues or anything, or even like the strength loss that most people deal with. So, this prep is really my first time dealing with these changes. And I mean, it's only been like not even to like almost 2 weeks, 13 days since my competition. So like I would say I'm dealing with that now, and I will tell you that the past 2 weeks have been harder than every other week of prep. And I'm eating a lot more. And it is mentally very, very challenging. But what I've found is it's tempting to want to I have a ton of photos to want to just keep presenting those and like, oh, on the days I look cleanest, I'm gonna post those photos and, like, start to drift away from my social media even, but I realized just from my own experience of having looked up to people in the fitness community and wondering, "How do they maintain this stage body year round?" There's so much value in showing the reverse process and, like, and the reality of what that looks like. Because when I competed for nationals, I was actually about 10 pounds lighter than my show the weeks before. I just started dropping weight pretty easily because my metabolism was just crazy. And now I'm back up that 10 pounds in 2 weeks. But you people don't realize it's like it's water you fill out. You're not doing as much cardio. You are refeeding. So there's going to be a little bit of body fat right off the bat. It's hard to show that because you're used to every day getting leaner and leaner, and then all of a sudden, you feel like you're a whale. Like, within 2 weeks of a show, people are still telling you, like, you're so lean," and you're like, I'm hungry all the time, I'm eating double the food, I'm doing half the cardio, and I feel like a whale, and I'm up 10 pounds, and, like, that really needs to be we need to be more transparent about that because you cannot maintain the stage leanness, and you should not ever strive for that because that is, like that day is when you look like that. That's it.
Yeah, you might be able to maintain it. You might be able to maintain it for like maybe another day, but yeah, then you're shot. Then
Right.
you're just yeah. And I love that you brought that up because yeah, so many people struggle with that. And first of all, get a coach too when you're starting because so many people without coaches they don't understand that. So then next thing you know, we've heard horror stories of like gaining like 40 pounds in like 2 weeks afterwards or something like that, where you're just like, that's not even. That's just absolutely insane. But a part of maintaining that lean look that a lot of people do a lot is cardio. And I am, cardio, whenever I hear that word, my legs start to shake even a little bit now, just even as I mentioned that. I mean, I absolutely hate it, but as I've had more free time during this pandemic, I've done a little bit more of it. Now, when I say my cardio, I mean walking basically, but what is your relationship with cardio like? Because I know for bodybuilding, it's one of those essential evils basically that you have to do.
Yeah, it's weird. I was always like I always hated cardio, hated it. I'm much more of like a sprint kind of person, so like the idea of doing anything steady state is just like makes me want to throw up. But it was weird like throughout prep it became so much a part of my routine, and honestly, my life got so busy through prep, like insanely busy because I was balancing full-time night shift nursing with, if it's like a 13, 14-hour shift, I have to get, 45 minutes of cardio and lifting in before. I'm sleeping like 3 hours, going in all night and working, trying to stay awake through the night, like moving patients around. Like it was so exhausting. Cardio was like the one part of my day where I was allowed to not do anything else but watch YouTube. And like and it was like a personal challenge. So like my cardio was not like we're just gonna walk. Like I did not have time to do 2 cardio sessions a day. There was zero time. So I was on the Stairmaster at like 16 for 45 minutes, like running up the Stairmaster. Like there was no other alternative because there's no way I could have fit a second session into my day, or else I just wouldn't sleep. So it became like something I was really proud of, and I felt good doing it. And even though it took a lot out of me, like I felt very healthy having that in and very conditioned. And I do think that it helped with my leg development. I actually like built some calves doing it. So I was like kind of multitasking here. It's crazy. Maybe you should try the Stairmaster.
Screw you. Screw you. No, but no, so I gotta reiterate. So for me, my cardio, because I had so much free time, it would be like 100 minutes of me power walking like 5.5 mile or 5.5 minute, or I mean 5.5 miles per hour basically, and I do it for like 100 minutes just because I had nothing to do. But I could only do it if I had a movie on because that's the only way I could keep myself entertained. I have now run out of movies to watch, so I haven't done cardio for like a week now because I literally watched like 60 movies that I hadn't seen before, and then I'm like, okay, all the movies that I wanted to watch I've done now, and I don't want to rewatch. So yeah, that's just a whole struggle in and of itself. But the last couple of questions here, I mean, sleep is the most important thing when it comes to recovery. It's probably, I mean, in my opinion, it's the most important thing, just overall, because go 24 hours without sleeping and then try to work out and then tell me how that feels. If you're even able to get to the gym in the first place. But what is the proper amount of sleep that you try to get? I mean, being that you work nights and then you also have bodybuilding, I mean, that just seems extremely insane to me just because those are two. Nursing is another thing too, where I mean your hours are so messed up sometimes, and bodybuilding, I mean, you have to get the proper amount. But what's the recommended amount that you try to get, and are there any tips and tricks that you use to get that amount of sleep? Because I always say working nights, it's very hard to go to sleep as the sun's coming up.
Yeah. Actually through prep, that was one of my biggest struggles. And and if you're on stimulants too, that just exacerbates the whole problem. I mean, you're not sleeping at all. I was sleeping like on average 3 or 4 hours a night. And like, I am a solid, like, 8 to 10-hour kinda sleeper. Like, feel like I require that to even function optimally, and I think that people just settle into the way they feel when they're sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night and think they function well because they don't realize what they're missing. And, like, since I've been off night shift this week, I've been sleeping, like, 8 hours, and I felt so good, and then I had one night where I slept 5, and yesterday, I felt like a zombie. I watched a video by John Meadows, and he was like, "When you don't sleep enough, you feel like you're melting." And I was like, "Exactly." Like literally all day, I was just like just go ahead and put an IV of caffeine in me because I'm dragging my body behind me. I was like, "How did I do this on prep for so long?" And I realize the importance of sleep, and that is one reason that I've decided to step away from the nursing because in this capacity because it, it's just not sustainable. Like you really do need eight to. I mean, ideally, if you could get 10 hours, it'd be awesome. Or if you could do 8 hours and take a nap, that would be amazing. I was talking to a chiropractor who worked with Big Ramy in Kuwait, and like was the chiro at their gym, and he was saying these guys literally train, eat, sleep, like equally important parts of the process. But we so quickly go train and eat and work, train and eat and work. Oh yeah, and then maybe sleep a little. Lots of caffeine, train and eat. And it's like,
Well, again, I gotta say it would be nice if you wouldn't have to work. Then I think sleep would be a lot easier for everyone.
right,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right. So, but it's learning to structure your schedule. And again, that goes back to being honest with yourself about when you're kind of like screwing around and you have time that you're wasting, you know? And it's like, you have to learn to be efficient,
Yeah.
you know?
And I mean, there are times that I felt sick, not getting enough sleep, and your immune system is kind of shot too. I mean, especially being on prep too. I mean, I can't imagine what that must be like. But before we wrap things up, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to, Olivia?
Let's see. Definitely my gym community has been freaking amazing throughout this entire prep. I go to Destination Dallas. I'm now working there as a personal trainer, which is super exciting. So if anyone's in the Dallas area, they can come get a workout. Um, I also joined the team for Gasp and Better Bodies, which is also through that gym as well. So I'm just really thankful for that opportunity. And then just like my coach, Johnny Castellana, has been freaking incredible and would highly recommend him for anyone who is looking to compete and also concerned about their health. So he's very big on that. So those are my top 3 for right now for sure.
Well, yeah, and that's so important. I'll leave a link to all that stuff down below. And again, Olivia, we cannot thank you enough for coming on and sharing your story. I mean, I really, really appreciate it, and I think you're going to do great things in this sport. I can't wait to see what they are. But again, Olivia, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. It's been awesome.
Well, I couldn't think of a better way to end this. Can you give us a front double buy and everyone just gets embarrassed and starts working out again? Because I couldn't think of a better way to end it.
We'll do the scrub version.
The scrub version, yeah. So what's that like when you're a doctor then and people go around and they see that? What's that like for them?
Well, what's funny is like scrubs kind of cover up your body. So people don't realize that you're jacked until you're bulking and you're like busting out of them. So they'd be like, this patient's difficult. Go get Olivia. And I was like bulking. I'm like filled out my scrubs. They're like, oh, you brought in the big guns. But then you're the one who has to help everyone pull up the patients. So it's better to wear big scrubs and cover it all up so no one really knows and you don't get
Yeah.
utilized like that.
Well, again, a last piece of advice, yeah, for this podcast. But again, Olivia, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Everyone, go and give her a follow on her Instagram page and everything else. I'll leave a link down below. Warning, you will get inspired to work out, get off that couch and stop eating those Twinkies. But again, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.